If you've seen our review, then you'll know that we think Ghostwire Tokyo is a solid game that's let down by some iffy combat in places. However, the thing that truly shines within is the detail that's been put into the world, the atmosphere and the feel of things, and of course, those ray-traced reflections. I'm Ben from Next Gen Base, and this is our technical overview for Ghostwire Tokyo. The first thing to note here is the abundance of performance options that are available on the PS5. Instead of just opting for a straight quality or performance option, Tango has included 6 different modes in which you can run the game. The first is the quality mode. This targets 30 frames a second and includes ray-traced reflections at a native 4K. While it looks absolutely stunning, it feels a little odd in motion, and that, much like our recent analysis of Elden Ring showed, is down to frame pacing. It's not very consistent here, and it results in a slightly juddery feeling experience, as the 30 frames a second cap is hindered by somewhat inconsistent timing between frames in a number of places, rarely giving you a solid frame rate. In some less demanding areas, it often exceeds 30 frames, which means that either there isn't a cap in place, or the frame pacing gets so egregiously out of sync that when the game puts out a frame rate, it's well in advance of what it's expecting. However, if you're a photo mode fan, this is absolutely the mode to stick on as you head in and take some snaps. Next up is the standard performance mode. As with most titles, this performance mode targets 60 frames a second, although there are a few areas in which this isn't achieved. The big difference here is with the reflections. As you can see, it uses screen space reflections when in performance mode, and it's definitely something that once you've noticed it, can't be unseen. The general gameplay here is pretty smooth though, but when the rain comes in, you'll find frequent dips below 60. Even without the wet stuff coming from the sky, there were moments when I wasn't capturing that I definitely felt the frame rate dipping as well. Where it gets interesting though is the high frame rate modes. There are 4 to choose from, and these feature unlocked frame rates with a further option for VSync to be applied as well. For those not in the PC space, VSync locks the vertical refresh rate of the output. If it's turned on, this essentially means that you'll be attempting to push a signal of varying frame rate down a fixed 60Hz pipe. When a game can't render the target frame rate, the end result for players is stuttering performance or a noticeable drop in frames. If it's turned off and you aren't running on hardware capable of supporting VRR, or variable refresh rate, one of the big things that you'll notice is screen tearing, as the game is rendering frames in a way that the display can't necessarily cope with. Essentially, torn frames are where you'll notice a distinct line in the screen, where it almost looks like the image has been chopped up, and one or more of these chopped sections gets nudged to the side. We've been clamouring since launch for Sony to get VRR implemented on the PS5, and with Ghostwire's high frame rate modes, it almost seems as some indication that the feature is very close to being included. Until that time, however, it's almost impossible to play the standard high frame rate modes without some serious screen tear, which will give you a much worse experience overall. The high frame rate quality mode does add RT reflections into a higher frame rate environment, and the HFR performance mode seemingly goes above and beyond the standard 60 frames a second cap. But again, it's impossible to recommend the non-VSynced modes due to the abundance of screen tearing that takes place. Thank Mikami then for the VSynced modes. These unlock the frame rate but eliminate screen tearing completely, allowing for ray-traced reflections with a negligible hit to resolution, and in the case of performance mode, offer up a more stable 60 frames a second offering. The game does indeed output in 120Hz if you have a capable display, and I played for a while on both modes in HFR performance mode, offering a much more smooth feeling game than the standard performance mode. If, however, you play HFR performance with a 60Hz display, you may feel the odd frame drop here and there. It's a strange beast, and I suspect it may be something to do with having too many frames rammed down the pipeline in the performance mode, but if you want the absolute smoothest gameplay, this one will be the one to choose in my opinion. With all that being said, I spent the vast majority of my time with the HFR quality mode with VSync enabled. Once you've seen the limitation that screen space reflections have in this game, you'll not want to give up the ray-traced goodness. Thankfully, the HFR quality mode adds these in with a small hit to the resolution, but at times you can achieve a remarkably stable frame rate that pushes 60 frames a second in some sections. With either performance mode failing to achieve a locked 60 for one reason or another, the HFR quality mode provides a stunning level of visual fidelity with ray trace reflections at an acceptable level of performance that's often on par with the standard performance mode. The final thing to mention here is the motion blur settings. This can often help the feel of a game, particularly at lower frame rates. By default, this is set to medium, but can go all the way up to cinematic, as well as being turned off completely. It definitely goes some way to masking the transition between frames, particularly on an OLED panel, for example, where the pixel response time is extremely fast, but it's more than likely going to come down to personal preference here. So there we go. Ghostwire Tokyo looks absolutely sublime with some gorgeous takes on downtown Tokyo, but without a fundamentally locked 30 or 60 frames a second, you've got some choosing to do with the visual modes. Our recommendation is to play in the HFR quality mode with VSync until such time that Sony decide to make good on their promise and finally give us what we want in the form of VRR. Thank you for joining us, guys. If you have enjoyed this video, please do drop us a like, leave us a comment and subscribe to the channel because we're going to have plenty more content coming really soon. Take care. Bye bye.